What's good? Patrick Mallett here. In this video, I'm going to be talking about the lessons I learned during post-production of my first feature film. The documentary is about a 75-year-old sled dog racer dealing with the reality of retiring from competitive racing. This project has been my baby for the past couple years and was completed with a very small crew and minimal resources. My goal with this video is to share some of my experiences and hopefully help you on your filmmaking journey. Post-production for feature-length docs can be kind of scary, and it took me about 2 years to edit my film, and it involved going back into production a couple times, all while working a full-time job. It's totally doable, and here are some of the best practices that I learned along the way, and I hope I can help you in your journey too. Reference your structure if you have one. I created a loose structure for myself during pre-production that helped me visualize the big picture for the project during post. I knew before filming that I would have two storylines happening during the film, kind of like the present hero's journey, which was the race, and then interview-supported flashbacks that would provide background and context to the characters. In post is where this structure was actually able to come to life. The goal was to bounce between the two storylines to continually give the audience the right amount of information at the right time. I kept this in the back of my mind while sifting through footage and starting to build out scenes. Make a roadmap for yourself. Try to break things down into small, digestible tasks. What made the most sense for me was going through each day one at a time and getting rid of unusable footage, kind of like those in-between moments that I was 90% sure didn't have a place in the film. In my first pass of the race footage, I went from 17 hours and 26 minutes to 10 hours and 15 minutes. This is the approach of slowly whittling things down to the best of the best. When developing your roadmap, it's also a good idea to establish the different types of tasks that you may have in your edit and switching between them when things start to feel repetitive. It's easy to burn yourself out when you're sifting through just hours and hours of footage. And for me, I curbed this by bouncing between the race footage and the interviews. These are tasks that I use different parts of my brain for. The whittling down race footage was more like quality control, and editing an interview for me is more like mining for gold. I did my best to bounce between these two different tasks to avoid burnout. Having this type of variety in my roadmap allowed me to be more productive with my time in the edit. Give yourself time to develop fresh eyes. There is a saying amongst writers that goes, writing is rewriting, and I think that's true for post-production. Editing is re-editing, meaning the edit will change on the way to your desired runtime and should change after that point too. The best way to nurture this process is by taking time away. Especially if you're involved in all or multiple stages of production, taking a break from editing is one of the best things you can do for your film. Whether it's a day, a week, or a month, I guarantee after a break, you'll notice things that you didn't notice before because you were a little bit too close to the fire. It's so easy to get tunnel vision during editing and feel like there's only one way to tell a story. But just taking a break can help you think outside the box and understand that there's multiple ways to get certain points across in telling your story. This is where having hobbies outside of filmmaking is great. Meditate, go on a run, take a bath. You may end up thinking about your edit while you're taking a break, but just giving your eyes a rest from the timeline is the real goal here. Know when to ask for feedback and realize who it is you're asking. This is something I struggled with a little bit in the beginning. I was so stoked on the project from the start because I knew it was a story that had feature-length potential, and that's something that I've always dreamed of. And I had shared my excitement of the project with my close circle of friends and family, so by the time editing came along, I had people that I could lean on for feedback on rough cuts. Blinded by that excitement to share, I forgot from my experience with client work that not everyone has the vision to see past roughness and focus on the bigger picture. Had I remembered that, I would have saved certain people for later revisions when I had something a little bit more polished. But it will be super important to have at least a couple people for the early edits that, really understand story. Maybe they're artists as well, and they know how to provide feedback on what's working and what has room for improvement. It's also important to realize that some people may have never been in this position to provide feedback on a film, so it may be in your best interest to help frame what you're looking for from them as your early viewers. Asking them questions after completing the film like, what moment did you feel the most connected to a character? Did you ever feel lost or confused? Is there anything you feel needs more context? A good rule of thumb is that if multiple people are bringing up the same thing, you need to address it. Also, if you're lucky enough to have biased parents that think anything you create is a masterpiece, getting their thoughts could be a solid morale boost. Be okay with going back into production. This can be a tricky one logistically, but may be critical for your story. For me, I was originally only going to interview my main character and just dive really deep into his background and perspective. But during the first rough cuts, with help of my early watchers, it became clear that the film overall was kind of lacking dimension. I was relying too much on one character to carry the film. It kind of felt like a step backwards to re-enter production, but at this point I knew interviews with my supporting characters were necessary for the story. The silver lining is that when I did shoot their interviews, they went super smooth because at this point in the edit, I had a pretty good idea of what I was missing and where those supporting interviews would help fill in the gaps. I sometimes think of editing as solving a puzzle, and the puzzle pieces are, the footage and different assets that you have access to. And if you're able to go back into production and get more puzzle pieces to build something different or add an addition to your puzzle as a whole, then that could really help your film in the long run. Know when to stop. This may be the hardest part of the post-production process. When I quote-unquote first completed my film was about a year ago, and that's when I started submitting to festivals. But just in that time, in this past year, I've made a dozen micro improvements where I haven't actively been editing, but that hasn't stopped me from thinking about how to make things better. I can't remember where I first heard this quote, but I eventually accepted the idea that this is the best that I can do at the stage that I'm at. Accepting that idea was liberating because now I can take everything that I learned from this film and apply it to the next one. And that starts with putting an end to / completing the film. That wraps it up for post-production. I really hope you got some value out of some of the lessons that I talked about. If you want to see more videos about the making of this film or the film itself, you can check it out via my channel, and I will see you next time.